Yeah, sorry. Wait for Anne to. That's it now. We're right now. Right. Sorry about that. Can I thank everyone for coming to this Corporate Parenting Advisory Committee? This is the final meeting of this committee for this municipal year. I want to say it's been a pleasure to work with the officers and to thank everybody for all the hard work, every meeting and all the reports that people have produced of such a high standard. This is a meeting in public and all the normal rules apply for filming and so on. And welcome to all the people on screen as well. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we do. Apologies have been received from Councillor Collette and Councillor Isla-Gosling.
Okay, do we have any urgent business? Any urgent business?
None reported.
Okay. The declarations of interest? Okay. Minutes, can we take the minutes as read? We've agreed? Agreed. Read them, signed them, so we're agreed. Okay, so let's move to item 6, which is on page 9, which is the IRO annual report. And Dion, can you tell us who's introducing?
Good evening. So I'm really pleased to introduce Naz Hussain, who is our Senior Independent Reviewing Officer, who is going to take us through his annual report of the Independent Reviewing Service. Naz, over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Nazim Hussain, Service Manager for the Independent Reviewing Officers, and I'm about to give you an overview of the IRO Annual Report for 2023-2024. Bear with me a second. For some reason, it's not coming up the way it should be. Anyone able to help?
It is showing on the screen.
This is up.
Is it showing okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. For some reason, it's showing different on mine. Okay. Thank you. So the IRO service has, sorry, that's really small on my side. Excuse me a second. So we're part of the Engagement Safeguarding Quality Assurance Service under Children and Young People's Services. We've got a team of 5 permanent independent reviewing officers and 1 fixed-term independent reviewing officer who's been with us now almost 2 years, and they're all line managed by myself as a service manager. We've got a diverse range of expertise and cultural backgrounds, and we've got proficiency in the service of around 8 different languages. Our reviewing officers develop long-term relationships with children and young people and their families, going through the journey of their care, and we remain consistent throughout. We try and promote stability and continuity with many of our young people who have the same IRO for many years. The role of the independent reviewing officer is to ensure consistent practice for the well-being of looked after children and care leavers. We try and work with other agencies, with our partners, to help prevent delays, ensure effective care planning, and monitor local authority actions. We help identify and communicate any concerns with the senior leadership. In terms of professional development, the independent reviewing officers have a range of things available to them to help, and they are responsible for their developmental professional development, and that's provided through the Haringey Children's Academy, TRIEX, online procedures, research practice, making research count, My Learning, and Haringey's Safeguarding Children's Partnership. We've got 2 qualified practice educators within the team. Actually, now got 3. At the time of the report, we had another independent reviewing officer who was doing the practice educator course. We now have 3 practice educators within the service. So our service priorities for 23-24 were to place children and young people at the centre of everything we do. Really pleased to say that our review minutes are produced with each child in mind, and again that's reflected in a number of audits and by our recent Ofsted inspection, Ofsted visit as well. We help improve efficiency and timeliness in terms of delivering review minutes, and care plans are consistently up to date with the introduction of Liquid Logic. Our second priority was to listen and respond to children and young people. And we've done that by focusing on performance through data monitoring, data and monitoring children's reviews. We've improved quality and timeliness and recommendations of review minutes, and we've engaged with young people in providing feedback, which I'll come on to a little later. Our third priority was to be ambitious for all of our young people in care. And we've done that through high quality care plans with a focus on achieving permanence, increased face-to-face visits with children and young people, and opportunities for children and young people to chair their own reviews or co-chair their own reviews, and collaboration with Islington partners in practice to review the IRO practice standards and CLA practice, children looked after practice guidance. We've had a slight decrease of the number of children looked after in comparison to the previous year, ranging from 368 in April 23 to 334 in March 24. That reflects the positive impact of the early help and frontline services in providing effective support and thereby reducing the necessity for children to come into care. Our average caseload is in line with the IRO handbook, and that allows the IROs to be able to respond swiftly and effectively with the changing needs of our young people, being proactive and in adapting to evolving circumstances and working to achieve the best outcomes for every child in care. 13 young people left care before their first review, whilst 12 young people left care by their second review. And again, that's the effective work of our practitioners and the Heart Service in supporting reunification efforts. We held 901 child in care reviews in 23-24, and we continue to have more males than females in care. And again, Black and ethnic minority groups there is an overrepresentation within the care system. And again, that's not only in Haringey, but I think that's a national issue. And that highlights the importance of continuing to address the systemic and socio-economic factors that have contributed to this disparity. In terms of review performance, we held 70% of our initial child in care reviews within time, and that was mainly due to the introduction of the new LCS operating system, data system, which required the adaptation of practitioners to a new way of recording. And we've made significant progress since April 2024. Our current stats look at around about 97-98%. We held 340 midway reviews in 23-24, and that's the highest number we've ever recorded. And that evidences our strong commitment to not only the IROs, but also our practitioners as well, in terms of strong commitment to not only maintaining oversight, but also progressing plans for our young people. 95% of our children and young people participated in their reviews, and 5% of young people who weren't able to attend or participate in the reviews. Some of them were missing or experiencing social and emotional challenges, which sometimes are often associated with their past experiences. IROs explore a range of alternative communication methods, including eye gaze technology, communication boards, PECs, speech generating devices, and other augmentative and alternative communication tools. In respect to feedback, we had a lot of positive feedback throughout the year. Here's a few of the examples. One of them from the head teacher. It was, and again, the IRO annual report has numerous other examples of the great and positive feedback that we have received. Many of our young people don't want to change anything in respect to how reviews are conducted, and they're happy with the way the IROs engage with them, both in reviews and also outside of the review process. In March 24, we had our SEND inspection, which identified many positives. Professionals across the partnership working creatively to address the rising number of children and young people with special educational needs. IROs have played an active role in supporting our young people with additional educational needs, and recognising that many of our young people are placed out of the borough. That means that IROs have to develop relationships with the local authorities over there, the professional networks, and coordinate quite a lot in terms of communication so that our young people get the right support when they need it. In respect to stability and permanence, we are, I'm really sorry, but one second, I'm just going to have to go to the other side because I can't read that. We're really mindful in ensuring that children are accessing the right support identified in the EHCPs, and that helps to support them not only through school, but also helps promote stability in their homes. We make recommendations for children and young people to be referred over to CAMHS and for social workers to arrange consultation meetings with First Steps, where young people have experienced complex histories and have experienced significant trauma, where the SDQs recognise that they need additional support. We have contributed to the placement stability panel, and we've been better involving supervising social workers in raising challenges where appropriate to do so. In respect to permanence, there's a great emphasis on advocating for secure and stable nurturing families for our young people. Our long-term stay placements, those that have been in the same home for more than 2.5 years, consistently high, currently at that time 71%, and that surpassed our statistical neighbours and national average. We play an active role in permanency tracking panel and the ADM forums. 25 of our young people were matched in their long-term foster homes, and 13 special guardianship orders and 7 adoption orders were granted 23-24. We've enhanced monitoring and tracking of key performance indicators and permanency within our service. In terms of improvements, we've made improvements in terms of the use of midway reviews to monitor the progress of permanency. We've increased the vigilance of permanence decisions and case files, and we have been collating data for children and young people that are matched with their child in care reviews, those aged 16 plus. We've continued to challenge, but we've changed the way in which we challenge. We are having a lot more relational dialogue with our colleagues to work towards seeking resolution, resulting in a reduction of the number of alerts and escalations having to be raised. In 23-24, we had 193 times we used the dispute resolution process. 135 of those were informal alerts, and 58 of those were formal escalations. Again, we've reviewed the use of the dispute resolution process to be more impactful, and we've got numerous examples where we have been able to resolve matters without having to escalate. The main areas are identified here in respect of the reasons for escalation, or the use of the dispute resolution policy, and the main factor remains social worker reports or care plans not being completed within appropriate timescales. Our impact has been really positive. We've got 42 young people who have left care and are currently involved or enrolled at universities. We were breaking barriers in respect of some of those young people. 4 adults were studying law, 1 attending Cambridge University. Additionally, we had a talented young adult at Oxford University studying modern languages and linguistics. 14 of our young people were graduated successfully from the end of the year, and a further 9 were expected to graduate in 2025. In the respects of education, employment and training, 19 to 21-year-old age group, 55% of our young people were in education, employment or training, and that reflects the positive impact of our collective efforts in ensuring their successful transition into adulthood. 76 of our young people moved into their own 1-bedroom flats, while 6 young parents have been provided with 2-bedroom flats. We had 4 reciprocal arrangements with other local authorities, allowing those young people to maintain stability in their geographical area and thus maintaining some important established local relationships. Some of our additional achievements: we have continued to maintain independent review of links with individual services. So each IRO has their own area in which they liaise with. We have been vocal and present at the Vulnerable Violence and Exploitation Panel. We have provided introduction to health workshops. We attend the Risk Management Panel, and we continue to promote and support organisational learning and development. Here's some of the examples that IROs have done in supporting young people outside of the review process, and that includes providing out-of-hours support to young people to overcome anxiety and help them feel empowered, spending time with young people who experienced an altercation, enabling better joint working between the local authority and the placement provider. One of the IROs spent several hours with a young person who needed reassurance with the post-18 options available to them and helped facilitate and agreed a way forward. And IROs are also supporting young people to remain within their placements when notice has expired, and again helping promote stability. Our priorities for the coming year have pretty much remained the same in terms of the umbrella. We want to ensure that we place children and young people in the centre of everything that we do. We want to listen and respond to children and young people, and we will remain ambitious for our young people in care. And these are some of the priorities identified for this year. And again, we've made some really good progress in respect to those. And that's the end of the presentation. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you very much. That, I think, it was a very, very comprehensive tour of the report. I did want to apologise to everybody in my eagerness to get the meeting going. I forgot to do all the introductions. So shall we just dash right around quickly before we ask some questions now? Is that okay? So starting on my left.
Anne Graham. Anne Graham, Director of Children's Services.
Ellen Weston, a councillor for Hornsey and a member of the committee.
Cressida Johnson, councillor for Crouch End and member of the committee.
Councillor Ibrahim Ali, councillor for Bruce Castle and member of the committee.
Pauline.
Sandy Mansell, I'm Service Manager for Fostering and Permanence.
Hi, Emma Cumbergen, Head of Service for Young Adults and Disabled Children Service.
Hi, Gregory Cooper, Programme Operational Lead.
Dion Thomas, I am Interim Assistant Director for Children's Safeguarding and Social Care.
Nazia Chowdhury, Democratic Services.
I'm Zia Brabazon, Chair of Committee Cabinet Member for Children, Schools and Families. And on the screen, you're there, Naz, so we'll start with you.
Sorry, Nassim Hussain, Service Manager for the Independent Reviewing Officers.
Can I borrow your screen, Anne? Are you?
I was on my
Oh,
phone.
don't worry, I can borrow him. I'll borrow him.
I'll join online.
That's okay. All right. So, Andrea?
Good evening, I'm Andrea Hull. I am the Service Manager for the Young Adult Service.
Thank you. Ageli?
Hello, good evening, everybody. My name's Agela. I'm Head of Haringey Virtual School.
Jackie?
Good evening, everyone. Jackie DeFalco, Assistant Director for Early Help Prevention and SEND.
Jane?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Jane Edwards, Assistant Director, Schools and Learning.
I think that's everybody because some other colleagues here are logged in. So welcome everybody and apologies for a bit of the muddle at the beginning. So shall we now go to the questions? Who would like to start? Ellen?
Yeah, thanks, and thanks, Naz, for the presentation, and congratulations on all of the achievements this year. It's really impressive. The question that I have is around the dispute resolution process and the sort of complaints. I can see and from what you've said, that there's been a sort of reduction in the number and more effective use of these processes. I was wondering, does the service have any particular targets for the kind of level of complaints or use of this process that you'd like to see, or is this kind of in line with what we might expect, just as a sort of marker of how things are going?
Yeah, so we want to try and reduce the number, the need to utilise the dispute resolution process. And I think by doing so, we provide a clear ethos that we want to be working in partnership to be able to achieve the best for our young people. One of the things I'd certainly like to see is a reduction in the number of users of alerts and escalations for administrative tasks such as social worker reports and care plans not being available in time for child in care reviews, which sometimes means a little bit of a disruption for some of our young people. That for me is a priority, and I'm working with our children looked after services, young adult services, safeguarding support to be able to work towards achieving that.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, and just to commend the work and the report, and it's very clear and helpful to see. So thank you for that and presentation. I just want to take you back to the Councillor Weston's actually taken on my questions. It's great. Saves a lot of time. But I had a question in regards to the young people, in regards to their sort of training and education. More generally, I think there's a stat that you mentioned, which is 55% are currently in some sort of training, employment, or some sort of education. So for the 45% that are not, what can we put in place, or is it a different part of the service that will need to sort of take that up? What's the kind of sort of strategies we'll be employing to try and ensure that they're on their way to making some means of getting a placement or a apprenticeship or a training sort of arrangement of some sort? Thank you.
Thank you. The statistic that I quoted was for care leavers, not those that are in care. I think the number of young people engaged in education, employment or training who are currently in care, so i.e. under the age of 18, is much higher than that. We do try and encourage, there are a number of activities and services available through the young adult services that helps promote pathways to education, employment and training, and Andrea hopefully will be able to provide a little bit more of an insight in respect to the work that things like the Money House, the careers advisor attached to young adult service are able to provide. So we continue to work on that, and we continue to have education as a focus, education, employment and training as a focus of all of our children in care reviews. Just reflecting on some of the final reviews, many of our young people are engaged in colleges, etc. So we unfortunately we don't have independent reviewing officers. Our involvement kind of ends at the age of 18 when they leave care. And our young adult services, I think, are working towards promoting that number of children and young people who continue to engage in education, employment and training.
Well, I've got some comments. Well, firstly, just I'm so impressed with the content of that report. So many strengths and improvements. But I'm particularly pleased to see the improvements in stability of placements up to 75% from higher than last year. That's brilliant, and something we talked a lot about over the last years since I've been on this committee. And this really stuck out for me. The voice of the young person rings loudly through the EHCPs. Well, bravo. So it should, but that's absolutely brilliant. I'm delighted to hear that. This is a layperson's question. I'm interested to know how do young people report finding chairing their reviews? If they said anything about that.
We have had a direct feedback in terms of the in terms of young people providing feedback on that in terms of their experience. So that's something I think you raise an absolutely valid point, Councillor Johnson. That's something that I will certainly have a look at in terms of this year. But in speaking with the IROs, our young people absolutely enjoy where they do participate in their reviews. It helps empower them. It helps them have a sense of control over certainly the direction of the care planning and the conversations that happen within their meetings. So I'll certainly have a look at adapting some of our feedback questions to ensure that where young people do chair or co-chair the reviews, what directly what their experience is. So I look forward to reporting on that in the next report. Thank you.
Thank you. It's going to be my first question. It was about how the impact of children chairing their own meetings. I was quite interested to see if the dynamics of the meeting changed actually as young people took more control of their own planning, their own environment. I'd be quite interested in your views or anybody else's views on how it changes, how the professionals, if you like, operate within that context when a young person is chairing. So that's my first question. I have a second question, which is really about challenge. I think this role is quite a difficult role, it seems to me, because you have to be an advocate and someone who has to challenge what's going on in another part of your own department where your colleagues. And so it was really, you've talked quite a lot about it in the report, but I'm really quite interested in how you think that works, because everybody has to be committed, it seems to me, to make a system like that work. The statutory framework demands that you do it, if you like, be an advocate for a young person, I think. But how it operates in practice, you have to be careful not to ruffle feathers and all that stuff. So I'm quite interested in that area. And the third point I wanted to make is that I think this report sort of leads us to the report about the virtual school, because there seems to be so much interaction, overlap. I didn't realise how complicated a role this was until I read the report and all the dimensions of it. So I agree with everybody, all my colleagues. It's very, very impressive. But I would really be interested in your, it's no right answer. I'm just interested in the thoughts of as colleagues, how you do it, really. I'll just finish there. Yeah.
I think Naz might have frozen on the screen.
No, I'm back
Yeah.
again. Sorry, my VPN cut
It was
out. Apologies.
contemplative freeze.
I was thinking about the answers, what answers I was going to give. Councillor Brambles, unfortunately, I missed the last point. I certainly got the points you made in respect to the dynamics of young people chairing, co-chairing their reviews. I got the question around, or the query around, how we go about challenge and not ruffling feathers whilst maintaining working relationships. The last point, unfortunately, I missed. My VPN cut out there.
About, I didn't realise the complexity of your service actually, and all the different roles and all the different meetings, and how much focus is on the young person through all these different panels and so on. And the final, that was just a comment, and the final point was really about the link to the virtual school, which seems to me to be, this leads into the virtual school. There's so much overlap. That was another, just an observation really.
Yeah. So in respect to the dynamics, I think professionals kind of perk up and I'm going to say are a little bit more responsible in answering directly to the young person. The conversation, in terms of the dynamics of the conversation, starts off with what's important to the young person. I mean, and I think that's right. It's their meeting. They've already attended personal education plan meetings, etc. So they'll be aware of the content of those discussions and what those targets are. But sometimes it's just everyday life things that young people want to prioritize. So the conversations kind of focus for them on what's important to them. Obviously, the IRO is there to support and ensure that we get a range of information that helps them understand that whether the care plan is or is not right, or how it might be enhanced for the young person. But yeah, in terms of dynamics, I think professionals and other participants are a lot more, I'm going to say, responsible and responsive to young people when they're the ones who are asking the questions. In respect to challenge, this is something that we have continued to work on, certainly throughout my journey within Haringey, as an independent reviewing officer, now as a service manager, where we try and ensure that the focus of the challenge is on the young person. It's never personal. It's never about practice. It's about what it is that we want to be able to achieve for the young person, and having an honest and frank discussion about how best to be able to achieve it. We're not always able to agree on a resolution, but we certainly steer it in the right direction. And through that, I think, through that partnership working, I think there are a lot less ruffled feathers.
Sorry, just since we're talking about the issue of challenge and oversight, I know on page 36, there's a number of initiatives underway in order to try and develop the oversight element of the challenge in particular. I'm just curious as to how that's being developed in terms of tracking it all the way through. Is it things that we're working towards a work program or some sort of RAG rating? These have all been slightly implemented already, or are these things that we wish to do and we need to expand on them? We need to think about the framework. For some things you've mentioned in the report already, which seem to be underway. So, for example, the midway reviews, for example, that's quite helpful, I'd assume, in terms of really trying to minimise as much use of the DRP. But are there other things, for example, that you've listed here that are more aspirational but just need some thinking in terms of how to make it happen and how then to actually monitor the success of that?
So we review our data regularly, and through our data, we know whether we are or are not on the right track. Councillor Ali, if you can point me, sorry, my report ends at page 31.
Page 36, developing IRO challenge and oversight. It would be page 25 of the original report. Sorry, Haringey is 36, but you say 25. It's the way the pack's been organised, the minutes and the agenda item.
Right, gotcha.
Page 25 of your report.
Thank you.
Of your slide deck. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we continue to collate data in respect to children who are placed with their parents. So we try and aim for, if a young person has been with their parent for 12 months and it's going well, we will be advocating for consideration being given to discharge in the care order. That child then need to be in care? We continue to work with our health colleagues to be able to improve young people's access to health. And again, I'm an active participant in some of those working groups. We do work closely with our virtual school and the head of the virtual school. And again, I'm really pleased to say that Agele is very responsive where we raise queries. In terms of reaffirming links, we are attending once per quarter, at least once per quarter. And again, we do respond ad hoc when social workers, team managers and service managers reach out to us in respect of any queries. So all of the things I'm going to say that we've identified within enhancing the challenge and oversight is well underway.
Sorry. So that's really welcome. So my cheeky suggestion would be for next year's report, it would be good to see a particular example of that. So sort of case study if possible, well, within reason, just to show how it works in practice, to show that it's really underway and it's really achieving what you set out to do in terms of reducing the number of DRPs, because we've done this intervention at this stage, therefore it didn't need to be escalated. Whatever's appropriate within the rules of the rules, as they say. Thank you.
Well, that was a really interesting report, and I'm sure everybody has really enjoyed the presentation. So thank you very much, and for all the great work. I'm going to move us on to the next report, which is, I think, the virtual school, and that's item 7, which is on page 57. And Jane, you're going to lead on it, I think.
I am. Yeah, thank you. So good evening, everybody. And this seamlessly leads on to the head of the virtual school report that Agele is going to take us through. I think, you know, when you work in this job, you think of yourself as a corporate parent and you think about what you want for this child if they were your own child in school. And then as a virtual school, what you're trying to do is you're trying to make sure that you are advocating, championing, sometimes negotiating to make sure that our children in care and the children with social worker get the very best experience they possibly can in our schools. And in recognition of the fact that we have a number who are educated out of the borough, that brings significant challenges. I think the front page of Agele's report just tells you about the vision of the virtual school. Agele has been with us now just over a year. She's in her fifth term of being head of virtual school, and I think she brings a very clear insight into what it is that she's trying to set out, and the challenge she's trying to put into schools, and the challenge she puts to her young people, and the celebration that she brings for our young people. And I think that comes out in the report as well. So Agele, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Jane. I don't have a PowerPoint, and I do apologize. The plan was for me to be in person, so apologies for not being there in person. I'm just going to talk through some headlines in terms of the report. I don't know if it would be helpful for everybody if I put the report on the screen. Would that be helpful? And then we can follow through with me. Yeah, so I'll do that. Just bear with me one moment.
Don't worry, Agele, don't worry, because I think we've all got the report either on our computers or in paper. So it's nicer to watch you while you're talking, really.
Okay, fab. All right then. I'll just talk through some headlines, and that's what I'll do. So I think in terms of just the virtual school as a structure, I just spoke about it to some extent in terms of it being a very flat structure. So I have a team of 8 people with me. And one of the key things that's changed is that the EIC's education improvement consultants, they move through with the children now. It's not completely there, but we're moving towards that, whereby they're moving with the children. So that's happened definitely for our year 8s and 9s who have become year 9s and 10s. They've moved through. And also for our 10s and 11s, well, not our 10s, but our 9s and 10s who've moved through with the same person. So we're getting there gradually, but the idea is that once a child has a education improvement consultant, that education improvement consultant will stay with the child. In terms of just the context, in terms of our young people, there's been a 17% decrease in the children in care in Haringey since 2020. And there's been a continued decline. Also, if the pattern was to continue, numbers will continue to fall for 200, below 200 for 2025. Although that prediction seems, as I look at the numbers, but that was just kind of based on what I saw. But the numbers have declined. Obviously, we know that what's coming about is the role of the virtual school is increasing with the children wellbeing bill that's been going through House of Parliament at the moment, or House of Commons, and then we'll go through Lords, in terms of the role of the virtual school and the role that we have towards children with a social worker being statutory. So there's big changes in the virtual school in terms of our role. So in terms of just again going back to context, that 89 children were enrolled with an in-borough Haringey school, both primary and secondary aged. 114 children were enrolled with an out-of-borough, outside of Haringey school, both primary and secondary. And 40 children held an EHCP, which was maintained by Haringey. And for other local authorities, it was 25. And 23 children were identified as receiving SEND support. Also, just in terms of outcomes for our children, 57% of Haringey Key Stage 2 children in care achieved the expected standard in reading, writing and maths, higher than last year at 41%. And there were significant improvements with reading, writing and maths, with an overall increase of plus 15%, which is significantly higher than our London counterparts, and we're sitting quite the same nationally. Also, Haringey children in care, Key Stage 4 outcomes are higher in English 5 to 9, 23.3. And the children in care national outcomes for English grade 5 to 9 was 21%. And Haringey children in care outcomes are higher in maths at 20% than the general London average, which sits at 16%, and national 15%. So we have higher rates, and they're not quite where we want them to be, but in terms of our statistical neighbours and nationally, our rates were higher. In terms of attendance, whole school cohort attendance for the academic year was 87%. Primary school attendance tends to be higher at 94%, and secondary school cohort attendance is at 82%. And then also, I think you would have noticed in this report for the first time, in terms of, in terms of the difference from last year, is we had reporting for our SIN CP cohort. And what will happen in subsequent annual reviews is that we'll continue to report on our SIN and CP cohort. And just in terms of trends, the strongest outcome for children in need at Key Stage 2, the variable data for Key Stage 1 may be based on it being a non-mandatory, so some schools may opt not to administer the SATS test, but the results at Key Stage 2 were reflective of the brilliant work at primary, as the outcome for our children in need are higher than Haringey's statistical neighbours in London. So there's amazing work happening in our primary schools for our children, because our outcomes are great, especially for our SIN and CP cohort. And in terms of just going through our development plan, in terms of our development plan, we had 4 priorities last year in terms of what we were looking at, and our priorities for last year was facilitate and promote high standards of attendance. We feel we still need to focus on that for this year. Improve PEP quality and purpose to improve experience and raise achievement. We feel that we've in some ways met that in terms of the PEP quality. I think that's work that will continue in this year. Improve consistency and transition for post-16. We felt that had been met as we had a smooth transition for post-16. But there is still work to remove barriers for our post-16 cohort to reduce NEET figures and strengthen relation with SEND to improve outcomes. We felt that was met as we had strong links with SEND and we had brilliant outcomes for our children with EHCPs. For this year, our key objectives will be to facilitate and promote high standards of attendance. Like I said, I think there's lots of work to do in terms of us looking at our overall attendance being 87%. Just a note to that, it has been increasing and we just want it to keep increasing. Also, we want to create a culture of high educational aspirations focused on improving outcomes at Key Stage 4 in English and Maths. We feel there's work to be done in terms of making sure that our children who are in year 11 are getting the highest grade possible that they're capable of in English and Maths, and making sure we remove barriers to them obtaining that. Also, our third priority is to improve post-16 outcomes and increase the EAT retention across the cohort. That's a significant area for us because we want to make sure that our NEET figures are reduced. And then also to clarify and establish the Haringey Virtual School extended duties offer. It's going to be a big thing, you know, it's going to be statutory possibly from 2026. We want to make sure that we're ahead of the curve and we've got things established to ensure that, you know, our children can get the best outcomes. Those were the highlights.
Thank you very much. That was a really good tour of the report. I was trying to follow it as going along. I'm going to ask members to ask questions. Same order. Ellen, are you ready? Do you want to?
I can ask one. Yes, thanks. I just had a quick question. Thank you for the report and really congratulations on all of the achievements, particularly the attainment for Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 4. It's really fantastic and testament to the work that you do. I just had a question of clarifications. This is on your page 26, where you've got a table showing the pupil premium distribution. I just wondered what mastery was. It's the third one down. The others I recognise and understand, but I just wasn't sure what that was.
Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. So just mastery it's to do with in the classroom. So it could be just interventions that are happening to ensure that the young person can master a skill or master a particular area of what they're studying, and it's just called mastery. So that's sometimes the language that's used in schools in terms of once a child has mastered something, they then move on to the next step.
So it would be sort of in-person one-to-one support during a lesson as opposed to kind of tuition outside of normal school time, things like that.
Yeah, it would be more about what's happening in the classroom, whereas tuition would be identified as one-to-one tuition.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
No problem.
Yep. Thanks. Well, firstly, I just want to say congratulations on a brilliant year. It just, yeah, great across the board, really. I've only got a couple of things to bring up. So, I mean, attendance is pretty decent, given you know the group that you're working with. But I wonder what could be done to get attendance up a bit for that secondary school cohort. So that's my first question. And the other one was, I'm incredibly impressed by how much you've managed to bring down suspensions. And I wondered if you could talk us through a bit how you've managed to achieve that. It's absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, I'll answer the first question. With the attendance, one of the key things we're trying to do as a team is we meet on a regular basis to discuss attendance figures. And then what we will do is we will plan intervention for a young person, a child, in terms of just looking at their attendance figures. Now, sometimes with attendance figures, we have to read behind the figures. So it might be the school has given them unauthorized absence, but it shouldn't be unauthorized absence because I had an appointment which had been planned and the school's put it down as unauthorized absence. But what the meetings are helping us to understand is it's helping us to understand what the figures are behind what we're getting from our attendance monitoring. Also talking to the school and saying what needs to be done and giving them advice and guidance. Also as well, we're changing the structure of the virtual school slightly. So we have an attendance and inclusion manager who will be also holding attendance forums to support all the people around the young person. And that's the work we're doing. Now, I think in terms of, we know there's a bit of a national issue with attendance. One of the key things is it ties into other works in terms of how a child needs to feel that they belong in a school, and working with schools to make sure that they're making sure the children who they have in their school belong, and trying to work through all the issues that a child might have in terms of maybe preventing them from attending school. And then with the second question, just a reminder of the second question. You mentioned about...
Yeah, sorry.
No, so suspension.
I think
Second question was about exclusions.
The suspensions in terms of bringing it
it was
down.
how you've managed to bring them so significantly down, the suspensions.
What happens
in
when
1 year?
Yeah, what happens with suspensions is that when a child is suspended, we go in not quite strong, but we just try to make sure the school's not using it as a behaviour management tool. Sometimes schools get into habits where they start to use it as a behaviour management tool, when in fact what they need is other tools to support that child. And we go in quite quickly to say, look, is there any other ways? And what some of the work that's been really great this year is that some of the EPs that have been attached to schools, we've picked it up and with them, and they've been able to talk to school to kind of give them that advice. That's for our schools in Borough. And some of the work that we do at Borough is that when a child does receive a suspension, we're in and we're making sure we go to the reintegration meetings to say to the schools, look, this is not the way forward in terms of using this as a behaviour management tool, and can we think about using other tools? Doesn't always work, but that's the approach we take.
May I add to that, Chair? Yeah, I mean, Egala's being modest. Sometimes she literally will advocate and intervene and champion and seek other solutions and be a negotiator and a broker to make sure that we don't have a permanent exclusion, or to make sure that we have something else in place as an intervention so that we can maintain that placement. So it's a very, very important key role for Egala as the head of the virtual school.
I come back on that. Well, thanks very much. And yeah, I just think I'm blown away by that. It's absolutely brilliant for the young people who are in our care to have targeted that in such a positive way. Thank you very much.
No, thank you for the report, and you probably know that one of my favourite parts of the service is the virtual school. Got a big soft spot for it, and it does really great work to celebrate our children as well. So thank you for the work you've been doing and the work of the team, and it's been quite helpful actually you've seen this report laid out in this way, because I think it really gives us a flavour as to how multifaceted it is. It's not as straightforward as you think on the surface level. It's much more it's much more extensive than I understood it to be, so it's very helpful to see it that way. I had my initial question, but then Councillor Johnson gave me sort of a follow-up question to her question. So I started that follow-up question to the follow-up, which is on the issue of suspensions. I mean, this is probably a theory of mine, but I suspect that it's probably much more easier dealing with our Haringey schools because we've got a particular ethos or culture. It's quite different here. And I was wondering what's it like in terms of boroughs or other local authorities where it's the norm, quite frankly, just to pull that suspension lever very quickly, and then none the wiser. And I don't know if there's been any positive passing of shared experiences in Haringey in terms of how we've done things differently to not reach that lever. Because that's my worry. It's not the kids that are based in the borough. It's the kids that are based at other schools outside the borough who are not on that journey that we've been through over the last few years. It's just a curious, nosy question.
Aaron, you've wanted to come in here.
Jane Agella, do you want me to jump in, or do you want to go first, or shall I cover this one? So thank you very much, councillors, for your positive feedback for not just this report, but also the one before on the IROs. It's very much appreciated. The team do work incredibly hard, and they're very proud of their work too. Particularly the impact that it's making year on year. In terms of the work that we do on suspension, if I go back to sort of 2018-ish, that actually our exclusions and suspensions were very high. And I think and so Jane's absolutely right. We home in on every permanent exclusions, and we offer, in the early days, it was after they had been excluded, tell us what we could have done to prevent this position. And if you're thinking of this again, can you let us know? And so now we get ahead of the curve. Some of the things, and so we audit every case to make sure we, as Jane has said, we wrap around. But there has been learning that we've brought into Haringey. We always heard stories of a child who's doing incredibly well in school, and then they come in with a knife or leave one at the gate or not too far, and then their unblemished career is absolutely over because they can never cross the threshold again. And I remember going to a conference, but not just me, others, about up north, they were beginning to have discussions with teachers about, yeah, they brought a knife in, but they've not done anything else before. Let's think about the why. And so we learned to have those discussions about even a knife. What's the why? And we don't tell the teachers that they can't make the decisions. We just try and engage them and the families to understand what we can do. And so that's helped change the culture. So I think that people are asking questions about what we do. And so you'll know that part of our response, and I know we focused a lot on permanent exclusions, but we're taking the same approach to suspensions, is the use of what was the Octagon. We had to transform that to Commerce Road. And so collectively as a system, it's just changing, knowing that there's a place we can send children to. So we're working on suspensions, and because that's our narrative, people are looking at what more we can do. So in terms of our exclusions, yes, people are asking, how on earth have we done it? And so we are on the London and dare I say, broader stage for that. Jerry Robinson is off to Parliament as we speak. And we are mentioned in national reports, and so that culture will feed through into our suspensions approach. But that is the approach, to see every child as unique and what can we do, and then to see them as a whole. Now, sometimes, and you will be aware of matters that are in the discourse at the moment, that we may not be able to keep our record this year, but we're still working on it. Yeah, there was a particular incident that happened in the borough, and we may not be able to keep our numbers down, but it's a particular incident and it has context. Yeah. Now, at the beginning of that discussion, when Jane and I spoke with the Academy Chief Exec, she noticed the difference between our approaches. Let's talk about what we can do. And the neighbouring borough's approach was, we're not interested, do what you want, and I won't name the neighbouring borough.
To add something, Jane or Agella, to that? Go on, Jane.
Yeah, just to say that I think that trauma-informed approach and remembering that these are children is just fundamental to our work. And I think that's key. Whilst I'm delighted people want to congratulate us, there's still a lot of work to do in a lot of areas. And our service plan and our improvement plan recognises that. And one of our key priorities is improving attendance, but we're also aware of the fact that some cohorts of children, their progress is still not where at all where we want it to be. But maintaining placements, maintaining children in their schools wherever possible is just fundamental. So, because otherwise, some of these children get a lot of placement changes, a lot of school changes, and we know that for any child that's very disruptive.
No, I did. I want to go to the substantive question I had as well, which ties in quite nicely to this. And one of the things that I often think about is that there's a few things. One is in terms of the things that to work on. I mean, one of the things that I noticed was, you know, the service is quite well staffed. There's an element of agency, and I just wonder, what's the nature of the sector in general? Is that you'll always have to have agencies, and that's not necessarily a bad or good thing. But in terms of if we are looking to sort of progress with the children as they go up by year group or by phase, how would that work in the long term in terms of that permanence, especially when it comes to the key stage 1, key stage 2. I forgot the numbers, forgot the names right here. So the staffing structure, so that how is there any sort of plan to sort of try and get on permanently trying to fill these vacancies? And a separate point is about the attainment gap, which is not related. Just more broadly, I mean, how are we measuring our attainment in terms of the demographics of kids that we've got as well? And again, it's a much more wider question than the virtual school. It's education generally, but is there some sort of aspiration to look at that gap of kids? Some kids do better in the beginning and then end up much better towards the end. Some kids don't do so well and then catch up towards the end. We know that in different communities, but I'm just wondering if that kind of work is being considered as well. Yeah. If the power, again, subject to infinite money being available and resourcing. Thank you.
Shall I take both of those?
I can answer that. Yeah. I think in terms of the first initial question, with the agency, there is work to move them to being permanent. The reason why it's had that structure is because of the grant structure in terms of the way we're funded. As the virtual school, there's been a grant, but I think with the introduction of the statutory role, that would mean that our funding is a lot more stable. And then we can have that permanent role. So there is a move away from agency, and that is a goal that we're moving towards. In terms of the attainment, there's really exciting work happening with Lewisham Virtual School, where what they're trying to do is they're trying to kind of build their own models of monitoring in terms of us having more kind of closer attainment. Now, some of the work that we did just this year is that we looked at the year 11s who were underachieving, and what we're doing each term is we are collecting data on our children each term to see where they are, to get a snapshot. And then we're starting the term talking about their attainment. And for one of the examples that we had with year 11 is we had an aspiration day for our year 11s. And this was targeted at our year 11s who were not quite where they should have been for their target grades. So some of that work will continue where we're kind of making sure that we're kind of having a snapshot of our children, so that at each point we know where our children are and we know maybe where the interventions need to happen for them. In terms of the aspiration, you mentioned about aspiration, and in terms of us trying to kind of, is that to close the gap for our children? Is that what you were referring to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that's what it is that I think the key aspect is knowing where the children are to understand what needs to happen. If we don't have that snapshot picture, we don't understand what needs to happen. And we're collecting that on a termly basis now. And so a lot of our EICs are very much focused. So when we come in for the new term, they're focused on those children who are not where they need to be. And that focus is the PEP meetings, and that makes sure that those are the conversations that are continually happening to make sure that child has the right intervention to ensure that they meet their target grade. And also it's also about the work that happens around the child as well, because we understand there's a holistic approach, because there could be things happening for the child, and it's ensuring that they have support for those other areas. But some things are out of our control, but where it is, we're trying to make sure that we're able to track and monitor and have a real snapshot of where our children are at each term.
Thank you. So it's my questions are the further questions. Thank you, Chair, are about the EICs. So I can really see the value of the changed model so the EIC stays with the child, like moving towards that, because I can really understand that should provide a higher degree of consistency of support and advocacy for the child. My question is, are you aiming to get to a model where that, assuming that the child stays with you throughout the whole journey, of course, and that there will be children coming in and out at different points in their education journey. Are you anticipating that the EIC would in principle stay with the child for their whole education from kind of early years up to year 11? Or would it be that there is a change in approach sort of after primary? So because I imagine that, you know, because the differing nature of what children are looking to do in schools, the changing stage of their aspirations and their own planning for their future and so on, like the support that a child or a young person might need in year 10 and 11 is very, very different from the point where they're at year 1. So I, you know, just in terms of like the ambition about how you might see that progressing into the future, that model. And secondly, do you have any early feedback from the children that are supported by the virtual school about who have had more consistency about whether they're experiencing any benefits from keeping that EIC across the first year? Or maybe it's too early to say.
So I'll take the first question and Nigella can take the second one. So when we had our ILACS inspection in February 2023, they were really clear that they felt we should have our EICs following the child. And if you think about it, as parents, we sort of grow up with our own children, don't we? And I don't know about you, but by the time I got to A level, I was always slightly floundering in supporting my own children. But the important thing in terms of our organisation is if we're going to have that, and that is the model we're moving to, is for the EIC to give some really constant support and a constant member of the virtual school staff to follow their journey, is that they still have access to those key stage experts. And that's the important thing. So a bit like when you're a parent, you know, I was a secondary school teacher, but I wasn't very good at early years. So when I was stuck on early years, I was always ringing my mate who taught in early years. So it's about having that access to the staff who have the expertise, but maintaining that really strong link for the child in terms of the EIC. So does that make sense? And then Nigella, I don't know if we've got any feedback again.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, you know, we haven't had written down feedback, but for the children, there's been the consistency of knowing they have the same EIC. And I think that's been evident in the flow of how the PEPs are, in terms of the child attending the PEP when they, in terms of if I think about one of my EICs who's moved through with his year 9, year 10 cohort, in terms of the flow of the PEPs, the children are more likely to come. They know it's him. He's able to build relationships. Now, the thing is, it'd be great to kind of get their view in terms of how they see it. But for me, I'm very much I'm guided by the voice of the child, and also the my experience of being in a borough whereby we stayed with the child. And when you first you have a child, they're a bit reticent, they don't know who you are, but by the end of it, you know, you become quite a stable person for them. And I think in terms of really supporting our children with their progression in terms of what they want to do, you know, in terms of the EIC being a trusted person, you're more likely to get more from that child in terms of what they want to do following their school education. And you asked the question in terms of how it would work. The EIC eventually will stay with a child from key stage 1 right up into key stage 4. And then once they get to post 16, they'll have a new EIC.
questions, a question about exclusions and suspension. It was really about the process of having to deal with so many schools, actually, just the actual challenge of that. And the second one was about the NEETs. I think it's on page 67 of the report, and that particular area of work, which I think you're quite self-critical. I mean, I have to say, having been involved in virtual school for a few years now, I think it has changed out of all recognition. I think it really has really lifted up in the last couple of years, and that's no doubt down to people leading it. So really, thank you very much. I think a general observation, I think we could all agree as members listening to this, is how individualistic this work has to be, individualized. And that's such a lot of effort. They're all different. Everybody's different. There are lots and lots of children, and you have to be, cognizant of all of them. And I think that does strike me how complex it really is. I think I speak for all of us on that. So anyway, back to the NEETs. What's your comment on that?
So with the NEETs, what we did have is we used to have a panel with the NEETs, but I think I mentioned it, I did take that away because I felt the work wasn't targeted. So what we're doing is we're commissioning services to target our NEETs. There's going to be the services for 10 NEETs, and we're going to review the process. Also as well, we're joining with a mentor who mentors care leavers, but he wants to set up a program, and we are meeting to develop a program of support for our children who are NEET. Also as well, it's us. There was the UK social fund, which was given to lots of different organisations around London. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to tap into that, because what that was, it was targeted at 16 to 18-year-olds. And there's usually a referral process, but it's not widely known. But what we're trying to do is make sure that we're tapping into that, because I think there's a lot of services and support for our young people, which is provided through funds. And it's about us being able to know what our young people want to do and connecting them to that. Obviously, sometimes there are moments where, if a young person is a parent, or if there are mental health challenges, they won't be able to enter the workforce. But I think what the goal for us is that where a child is able, we want to be able to give them as much support, and give them support, not just have a meeting, but for them to get that support, which they feel is useful to get them back into the job market, or in training or employment.
I think we'll be keeping our eye on that, because of the recent announcements in Parliament, which were also about young people who are unemployed. So I think we'll definitely be keeping our eye on what the trends are there, and I'm sure you will. If there are no more questions, I'll just say a big thank you. On excellent, really, these are really good reports. And of course, this report now leads into the next report, which of course is looking at young people who've left care or leaving care. So it's all very, very well planned. I can't think by who. So thank you very much. Should we go to the next report, which is on page item 8, which is on page 87. So that's Emma, I think. Is that right? Dion, you're Emma?
So it will be Emma who is presenting the report. Thank you, Chair. And I just want to also echo that I'm really pleased and proud sitting here tonight about, I think you are getting a really good sense in the overview of the work, from the aspiration of the independent reviewing officers through to the linking in with the virtual school. And that aspiration just speaks loudly and clearly through everybody's work. And from our point of view, this is all leading to, as we have our young people getting older and moving into our young adult service. And when I worked in Haringey 12 years ago, I worked with Emma at that time, and who was working in that service in a very different role. But it says a lot to come back 12 years later and find somebody who is so passionate, so committed, who has stayed in the service. And this is all about how we as an authority support young people in that transition through to becoming self-sufficient and successful in their adult lives. So I've got great pleasure in the next two reports, which very much link together, with Emma starting with her overview of the young adult service.
Thank you. Thanks, Dion, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide this overview. Andrea is my right hand on the screen, and she's actually going to manage my slides for me, just because I don't have two screens and I find it easier this way. So I've just done a few short PowerPoint to just help tease out the main aspects of the report. So next slide, please, Andrea. So the role of the Young Adult Service is very much to support our children in care from 16 to 18, and then to continue that support as they leave care at 18 until they reach 25. And we are working to ensure that every young person is really afforded that best start in their adult life through the provision of various supportive approaches and the guidance that we give to all our young people leaving care. The Young Adult Service provides support that really is focused on preparing our young people as they move into their adulthood. And currently we're actually actively supporting a full allocated caseload of 487 young people. 80 of them are currently children in care, 16 and 17. We have a further 407 that are care leavers, the 18 to 25 cohort. But we also have a cohort of 157 at the moment who we refer to as returning care leavers. So there are young people that have turned 21 that are more settled and stable, and we work with them in a slightly different way. We also see the throughput coming through. We already have 25 children and young people we'll be welcoming into the service in the coming months who are already eligible for our service, that are coming through from the Children in Care team and other teams across Children and Young People's Service. So the allocated caseload is very much supported by team managers, social workers and personal advisors. The 152 we oversee through a duty system, and we're a very stable and settled service, very much permanent in the main. I think I could count on one hand how many agency staff, so we're really proud of that, and it is a very, very committed service. And I'm actually in my 21st year with Haringey, so I've had a long journey with the council and the borough. Next slide, please. So we've very much grouped our service into 6 family pods. And the reason for this is because our model is very much around wanting to support young people through their transitions, through their journey. So as they come into our service at age 16, they enter into one of the family pods and they're supported there by their social worker. But they're also introduced to the other members of the team so that they feel a part of that pod and understand that the pod is much bigger than their one worker. And I think that's really important for them. And when the young person reaches 18, and if the time is right for them, they'll then transition to from their social worker to their personal advisor within the same pod. And the idea is to make sure that they transition at the right time as opposed to an arbitrary age, because lots of us aren't ready at 18 for adulthood. So it's about making sure that's as seamless as possible. And as I say, the personal advisor, as far as possible, we try and keep them under that umbrella of the same family pod, under the watchful eye of the team manager. And that's really very much to provide our vision of consistency. We know our children tell us that they tell their story time and time again. They don't want to do that. By the time they reach us, it's very important that they tell us once, and then we enable them throughout the rest of their journey. And we have the unique experience of being able to work with our young people for up to 9 years. And that really lends itself to the best quality of support during such difficult transitional phases of life. So we're trying to give as much stability and sense of belonging as possible. From the age of 21, for those that are settled and making really good progress, we move them to our transition of keeping in touch with them. So that's minimum once a year, but it can be as much as they want. We will always reach out. And we check on their progress, we check on their rent, we check on what's happening in their lives, and as much as they're willing to tell us. And actually, we have a really good performance. We're 99% in touch, which I think is a wonderful outcome and means at least we've stayed connected, which is really important to us. But our young people in that 152 can come back at any point if they find themselves in any difficulty or need advice and guidance, and we'll even move them back to allocated work if we need to. And those that are more complex, we then work with until the age of 25. And like all councils, you know, we have a responsibility as their corporate parent, and that support really encompasses making sure that we're thinking about their holistic needs, from education to employment to housing, to being able to live independently, to being able to have that personal development and sustain their tenancies. Slide 4, please. So we have a current accommodation and housing offer. Most of our children in care live in their foster homes. These are usually long-term foster placements, and that very much gives our children a sense of permanency and stability as they're progressing through their journey. Some young people between the age of 16 and 18 find that living in a foster home is perhaps not their preferred option, and they may be living in more shared supported accommodation. So that's 24-hour provision, and they have lots of key work support around them. At 17 and a half, we very much need to be on that trajectory to be thinking with the IROs, with the network of support, next steps, and what accommodation is going to look like post 18. So some young people and their foster carers, you know, with our support, convert their foster homes into a staying put arrangement at the age of the 18th birthday. So the carer will continue to receive some financial support from the service, and the young person will continue to live in their home until they're ready to move out. Moving on from staying put arrangements is usually planned before the young person turns 21. And normally it's through, because we've needed to provide a bridging gap to university, or going on to secure their permanent housing in Haringey. And currently we've got about 20 young people living in staying put arrangements. And you know, we only want to see that figure increase. Our funding for that, though, is less than we have in placement, so just something to note. Some young people move into their shared supported accommodation at 18. Some may be at university, in which case they'll be claiming their student finances and using their student finances to pay for their accommodation. And those that are not and that are in supported accommodation would be claiming their housing benefit element to fund some of their rent. We top it up, and we also pay for the support aspect. Young people moving into the shared supported accommodation usually have some independent skills, and as soon as they're ready, we would look to support them to register on Haringey Housing Register, and that gives them that priority bidding status. That means that they can go to the top of the list for potentially a secure tenancy. We also have access to a young people's housing supported accommodation pathway, and that provides sort of low-level supported accommodation to young people that may be not quite ready to move to their permanent and need a different kind of support. But that's not limited and only open to care leavers. It's open to all young people, Haringey young people. So our view is very much we'd like to ring fence opportunities for accommodation for care leavers in Haringey, and we think that would probably strengthen our offer to them. So we have been looking at all sorts of different options, and I'm not going to steal Greg's thunder because he's going to talk to you about one of those options, which is the Haringey Town Hall development, which we want to build on. Next slide. So in terms of independent living skills, We very much, welcome the foster carers and the key workers working with our young people to focus on building life skills whilst they're still living in foster care. And we also have a life skills module that we designed some years ago, and there's some core elements to that. It needs a refresh. And again, Greg will be talking a little bit about some of our aspirations around that. But we also run a 3-day workshop called the Money House. And that program very much is around managing your tenancy, avoiding eviction, online safety and scams, budgeting, spending habits, understanding benefit system, banking, planning for your future, energy efficiency, which is so important, water rates. And it's a really valued program. Our care leavers love it. We get a lot of good feedback from that program. Young people who have more complex needs and need more support around sustaining tenancies, we have a program called Housing First that just supports 10 young people, but far more intensively. And they do more wraparound support and very much personalised approach. And they can actually work with our young people Monday to Sunday, which we think is really important to be able to offer that extra support. It's for a very small cohort, so we have to choose wisely. But it is an offer and a good one. Despite everything that we do, we really want to do more, and we think that a toolkit to better record and visualise a young person's progression towards being ready for independence would really assist us. So that is a gap that we've identified, and as I say, Greg will talk about the recommendations around that. Next slide. In terms of education, employment and training, you will have heard me speak at this committee a number of times about our really good relationship around getting our young people into the civil service internships. So we've had 39 young people secure positions in the civil service from 2018 to this year, and sustain those internships. We had 42, as Naz was talking about, of care leavers at university last year, 12 graduating. This year we've got 38, with 7 potentially graduating this year. So we're really proud and excited for our young people. To really help our NEETs, our young people who are struggling to maintain a course or education or get into employment, we run something called an aspirations panel. Young people can attend themselves if they wish, any of their key workers. We've even had a dad come in the past and come with his son and come and talk about his child's aspirations and how we might work collectively together. And we work with organisations called Drive Forward Foundation, Haringey Works, Tottenham Hotspurs, and we help through that process and identify the young people that might need extra help with their CVs. They might need help preparing for an interview. And we also explore all the different opportunities, of which there is actually quite a lot. And as all our young people are unique, so it's finding the right niche for them, and building blocks. Some just aren't ready, and we have to accept that and go at the right pace. With regards to jobs in the family business, as we like to call the council, we've got 4 care leavers currently employed. We think we can do a lot better than that. And we have a dedicated task and finish group working very much around apprenticeships at the moment and work experience opportunities. I think our ambition is 10 ring-fenced opportunities, and we really would like to see an opportunity in every directorate for our care leavers. We can do this. The Care Leaver programme really sets out a lot more around our recommendations about how we want to widen work placements, internships, and offer some more dedicated outreach and recruitment campaigns that are focused on care leavers. But we also need resource, so it's thinking about what that might look like. We're really excited that we've put in a bid. You may have heard Central London Forward, Youth Guarantee Trailblazer is set to receive 5 million to deliver a programme specifically aimed at care leavers getting into employment. So we've put in our delivery plan. We have everything crossed, and we have got a really innovative programme. We hope that we'll be able to lead with the Inclusion Economy Service and Haringey Works. So we're waiting to hear. Next slide, please. At our last CPAC, you would have heard me talk about our local offer for care leavers. Ofsted rated us as good. So as you know, just a few highlights. We do offer council tax exemption up to the age of 25. We do make sure that our setting and up home allowance is delivered. We've got a good education bursary. We've got amazing access to our leisure services, which we've maintained, and despite all the changes. And now we are also delivering on the TfL discount travel card, and we're very much part of the free prescription certificate. I think we're the top of the leaderboard, but it's tiny numbers at the moment because it's so new, but it's good to be top. Whilst we know that this offer is good, you know, corporate parenting and corporate grandparenting to our children of our care leavers is really a whole council approach, and we're therefore really trying to work to strengthen that across the wider council. And we're hoping that our care leaver programme is going to also support us to do that with a bit more pace. Next slide. At our last CPAC, I also talked about how Haringey have very much adopted care experience as a protected characteristic. And we know it's not enshrined in law, but we have been working on what some of the recommendations could be that could assist us as a whole council with that vision. So we've made a few recommendations, one being that all future decisions, services and policies are assessed through the equality impact assessment process. And directorates really actively seeking out to listen to the voice of care leavers when they're developing their policies. We could look at co-design, collaboration, making sure that care leavers are included in any annual publication of information relating to people with protected characteristics in the service and in employment, and really each directorate of the council to consider developing their own specific offer or interventions for care leavers. And that could be in cash or kind. We're just looking for innovation and ideas. And if you look across boroughs, everyone's doing something different. Next slide, please. In terms of transitions to adults, we've been working really closely with our adult colleagues and also with the recent new transitions team. And we're already seeming to reap the benefits of that process. And care leavers are very much being supported now to access the adult services that they're entitled to. As a result, what we're seeing is reducing the number of young people waiting for adult assessments. We've only actually got 5 now who are over the 18 who still don't have their assessment. That has really significantly reduced, so it's really great progress. And we're working with the transitions team to really identify the young people that need that assessment prior to 18 and getting that done now. So we are reaping the benefits. I think we've got 10 at the moment who are going through that process. Next slide. And finally, our recommendations today is really to listen to the proposals that Greg is going to talk you through in the Care Leaver programme, which really has galvanized some thought around our needs and gaps analysis, and really trying to think about what our next steps could be, and where we want to focus our efforts and our resources, and to really think about whether we could include a cross-council pledge that incorporates care experience as a protected characteristic in practice. Thank you.
Thank you, splendid. I did think these two reports fed into each other, so I'm wondering whether we should hear the next report and then talk about the questions and discuss. I'm not sure there's going to be much discussion about the recommendations, or we just all say yes. But over to, is it Greg?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Leon wants to introduce you.
Thank you, Chair. So I am really delighted that Greg is here with us to talk through the Care Leavers programme. So this is something that commenced in the autumn of 2024, and Greg and his colleague Rebecca are leading what I think is a really exciting programme. So Greg introduced himself before. He's Programme Operational Lead, and is going to talk to you about the programme being designed with and for care leavers and the specific areas of focus within. Personally, I'm delighted because I've also been able to be part of this work, and that's being involved in focus group activity directly with young people who are involved in the shaping of this programme. So that feels a very important part of this because this is their programme, and I know how much Greg and colleagues want to ensure that this works for them. So without further ado, I will hand over to Greg, who will take you through this work.
Thank you so much, Dion. And again, thank you for the opportunity to present. So yeah, as Dion says, this is the Care Leavers programme. So just before I kind of dive in, I wanted to take a moment to talk about the name of the programme. So I know that there's been a move organisationally to refer to care experienced young people and using that language that cares. And the reason that we've gone with the Care Leavers programme name is about that specific cohort of those who are 18 to 25 and that status in Haringey. So it's helping practitioners to know exactly who's in focus, but with an awareness that we want to empower our young people with the language we use. So I just wanted to note that before we dived in. So as you can see up here, this programme is going to comprise of 3 intervention-based projects focused on employment, housing and independent living preparation. There's also going to be a further project that's going to focus on that corporate parenting and local offer element that Emma's just mentioned. And this is really what we'd call like an enabling project. We think it's going to really help to, get to the interventions and the outcomes we want in the other projects. And I'll outline those in further. We're also really focused on working side by side with the Young Adult Service. So making sure that all of this programme is in alignment with them. And I've really greatly enjoyed working alongside Emma, Dion and Andrea in developing this. But really, really importantly as well is it's consulting with our young people at every step along the way. So as Dion has mentioned already, we held a focus group in the first phase to hear their thoughts, take our proposals or ideas to young people and really give them an opportunity to give us both barrels and hear exactly what they thought of that. And I think it was really helpful, and a lot of what we've come up with is really informed from them, and I can hear their voices when I've come to present those different sections. And what we want to do is really strive towards that equivalent level of support to what you might see in a traditional household. So we've mentioned jobs in the family business. If a parent or an auntie or an uncle had a really big organisation that's so multifaceted, I'm sure they'd be able to find different roles and opportunities for them to develop their skill set, whether that's long term in that business or even just that first job to get some roles in their CV. We've seen that in housing, with the current economic crisis that we're going through, young people are staying with their parents at the age of 24. So how can we offer something equivalent to support our young people to find that foundation in their independent living at a really difficult time? So what's informed this presentation is the needs and gap analysis that we undertook. So quick overview of what the needs and gap does there, but a really key point for this is about building on those really good foundations that Yaz have already achieved. So when we're highlighting things that maybe seem like an issue, it's about those next steps as we move forwards. So I'll go through each of the projects in turn, starting with employment. So the first key finding, and it's almost an inverse of what we've been seeing in other presentations. So that neat data of the 46%, we found that, and we're trying to look at different ways of how we can reduce that number. So really speaking to what Councillor Ali mentioned earlier about what are those things we're doing as an organisation to bring that number down and find other opportunities. We identified that nationally across the board that care leavers may experience hardships through their education due to that placement change and the instability as compared to their peers. And also that there's a significant risk of, say, mental health issues, and that could really impact on that confidence in the workplace. And so how can we build a sort of support network around that young person coming into the organisation to help them thrive, especially as we're coming out of the outflow of the COVID pandemic and the impact that that may have had on our young people. And so moving on from those key findings, I'll now just outline what we think are the next steps for employment. So as Emma's mentioned, we'd like to secure 10 ring-fence posts for care leavers for work placements, or full-time roles, and that we'll tailor these towards our care leavers. We also want to build a pipeline of roles towards into those jobs as well, so that anyone at different stages of their development has an opportunity where they can come into the council and develop. So it's really exciting with the Trailblazers, but that might be a rung of our steps along to bringing people into the organisation. We also want to do a dedicated outreach and recruitment campaign. So how do we best reach these young people? How do they kind of receive information? What's going to help them, and take their feedback and say what's working, what's not, so that we can make sure that this is actually something they're going to be engaged with. We're also really focused on sharing what the council does. I think that was something we really heard clearly from our young people, was that we said, would you want to work for the council? And they're like, what do you do? So they know that there's social workers, but beyond that, what does this organisation do? Is it just collecting the bins and being able to share the real variety and opportunity there is for a young person? Because as we know, it's a really, really wide organisation. And then if and when we get these young people into these roles, how can we help them to thrive in that position? So move on to, let's say, promotions, or if it's maybe just that first job and they want to go somewhere else, how can they be embedded with the skills and the knowledge? So mentoring, as has been mentioned previously, helping managers in different parts of the organisation to understand the experience of care leavers, so that they're acting in that trauma-informed way and understanding the experience of these people. So moving on to housing. So what we found is in 2023-2024, we saw 62% of the placements were outside of the borough. Again, with a caveat of some of these are really great success stories. So young people at university, those staying put placements if a foster care has maybe moved to another locality. So kind of taking that aside, we still think there's more that can be done to bring our young people back into the Haringey community. And that was something that the care leavers fed back really clearly as well. They were really wanting to be in their community, close to where they're home. And another thing they were really clear on is like safe environments as well within the borough. We've also seen, obviously, given the cost of living crisis, that society, there's an increased pressure on rent, repossessions, and that many of our care leavers are facing rent arrears. But despite all these challenges, in the year 2022-23, we saw that Haringey's Yas team were London leading in placing young people in appropriate accommodation. So I think this again shows we've got an amazing foundation, and now we can keep on moving forwards. And so our next steps. So we're beginning work on a really exciting project to develop 11 flats for preparing young people at Hornsey Town Hall. And our housing colleagues have been really supportive and driving that forward. And we're making sure that we're getting that in a timely way. And this will hope to be a semi-independent accommodation that will have that sort of wraparound support to help them move on to their permanent tenancy. We're also going to work alongside our housing colleagues to find any other options that we can get and keep on pushing for more. But I think that this will come on to the fourth project about how we do that. And then again, alongside that independent living workstream that I'll come on to, it's about preparing for those future homes. So how can we not just find options for our young people, but then give them the skills to maintain that stability and move forwards. And so we'll now move on to independent living and life skills. And so the key findings we found here was that there was a really high demand for young people to access the Money House service that Emma outlined to you. And there was really, really great feedback from our young people. They were really enthused by that and were pushing for more access to that. So they were asking, can we get it earlier? So before I get to 18, can I start to learn about tenancies, or can I have a refresher? And I know that our commissioning colleagues have just recommissioned this contract and have looked at how they can have that access. And so we're thinking carefully about what is the right amount at the right time for someone's experience and what they're ready to undertake. We did notice that there was some issues with completion in the most recent financial year, but that commissioning exercise has now really taken a clear focus on KPI and monitoring. So seeing that that's being driven through to delivery and not allowing for that to continue. And that we do see there's a propensity for care leavers being in rent arrears. So we just need to making sure that we could maybe look for further support and training where we can. And so the next steps, we want to obviously look to how we can find any other services that maybe can work alongside that Money House services and within the existing envelope we have. But we also think that there's an opportunity for looking at, again, with this broad organisation, what can we do internally in terms of training and an offer? So if there's a team working on council tax, is there anyone who can offer finance advice? All the way to people who are working repairs, can they give like practical hands-on DIY support to help that young person know how to like do DIY? I know I'd love that because I have no idea at all. And then going back to another point that Emma made is about that pathway tool. So a young person not having to explain their story again and again, but having like a real visual tool and a way to share their story. So looking at what support and what training they've received and what are their next steps, so that any practitioner or anyone who's working with that young person can really pick that up and support them on to achieving their independence. And then coming on finally to in terms of the projects, the fourth work stream, which as I was saying is more of an enabler, will support these other areas. So we've really found that we think Children's Services is really, really focused on being a corporate parent, and it's a real key part of what we do. But this should be the same across the whole council. This isn't a responsibility just for children's and everyone else kind of leaves it. It needs to be every area is thinking carefully and deeply about what they're going to offer. So what we're going to do is try to find ways that we can increase that communication with different areas of the council and put that challenge forward of what is your offer and how can we further extend that. And as we're seeing, housing are really like looking to develop that. And in our work so far in employment, HR are really, really focused in terms of how they can help processes and opportunities for our young people. So it's beginning, but we want to push that further along. And as I say, further, we want to look at further interventions from different services, and also looking to work with the young adult service to develop how we present that local offer and that information so it's easily accessible. Because I think that we've kind of received feedback that whilst there's a good offer, it may not always be as easily accessible for those young people. And especially, again, thinking carefully about how do they engage with information and how do we make sure that we're meeting that. And so I just wanted to run through quickly how we think this programme is going to meet with our sort of broad organisational strategic goals. So like with the borough plan, this is really focused on that successful futures element, and especially the section that's developing that plan for financial stability for our young people. So I hope that you can see that through this programme and the way we've designed it, that commitment that we have as a council and that plan we have long term, we're working towards that, and we're going to have a really broad programme to meet that. We've got the Haringey deal, and we think that this is going to working with care experienced young people and supporting them to have the same outcomes as their non-care experienced young people. It meets our goal as an organisation to address inequalities within the borough. It's also looking at helping our young people to have healthier and more fulfilling lives. And by listening to our care leavers and really putting their voice at the centre of this programme, we're empowering residents and a really key demographic of our residents to have a say about how the council operates. And then for the Vision 2035 for Haringey, we're addressing the calls to action for supporting young people and children with their experiences and skills, tackling inequality, as I've mentioned, and ensuring safe and affordable homes. And also by focusing on the needs of care leavers, we're looking to achieve a borough that gives an opportunity for anyone to achieve the best in their life. So you can see that I'm very into my icons here, and I've used a triangle on this one. But the reason I've used a triangle there is it's that idea of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, of people achieving self-realization on their own terms. But what this program is about is furthering those base layers so that they can then build upon it and have the lives that they want to kind of lead forward. And so very quickly, our next steps are we're developing a business case currently, and that's with all different colleagues and areas in the council. And then what we'll do is once this has been finalised, this will be brought to the chairs one-to-one meetings with the ADs with social care and commissioning and programmes for scrutiny. And yeah, look forward to updating you on the progress in due course.
That was a really great report to round off an evening of great reports. Comments, questions?
Yeah, thank you all. It's really fantastic for me to hear all of this. I'm really proud of all the work that you do, and I think given the scale of the numbers of young people that you support, it's just even more impressive. So real huge congratulations for all of that. And I particularly love hearing your ambition. I know that it's there anyway, but I'm always so happy to hear it. And it's that sense that it's been recognised by Ofsted and now looking to take it even further. So I really, really appreciate that. My specific question, and it's just, I guess, more information about a specific thing that occurred to me during the presentations. So in terms of supporting young people into employment in particular, I suppose training, I completely take on board the point about seeing the council as a family business and looking to train managers and so on to be able to support care leavers that came to work for us or with work experience. But obviously we've got more care leavers than we could employ in principle. And so there will be ambitions for our young people to work outside the council as well, if that's more appropriate for them. So is there already, or will there be as part of this support to help our young people to tell their own stories on their own terms? So I can see that for some young people in an interview, for example, with an external organisation, it might be quite challenging for them to feel comfortable to talk about their life story and their experiences, or to explain their CVs and so on. And I would be really keen to know how we can support young people to feel that they can be confident in talking about that to the extent that they're comfortable with, so that that's not a barrier in an interview, for example, whether that's for a first job or promotion or anything else.
And we're looking at a whole range of opportunities, not one size fits all. And as you know, we're looking for 10 ring fenced in the council, so we have to look much more broadly. We have lots of young people in employment already, and we can learn from them about their experiences and hear about at what stage did they stay, or have they never. And it is quite a personal choice, and I think we need to respect that. And not everyone is going to share. And that's okay, actually. But what's more important is actually the support around the young person. What I've found over the years is that the little things as well as the big things that make the difference. So when our young people do get that first job, it's often having someone to speak to at the end of the day about what that first day felt like. It's about talking about, well, okay, you're going to get paid, but not for 2 weeks or for a month, or you may get 2 weeks in advance. How are you going to budget? You can't afford that coffee on the way to work every day. So don't do that, because by the end of the week, you might not have anything left. And it is about those basic conversations that you might have within your own family, and really thinking about what is it going to be like to be somewhere 9 to 5, if that's the type of job. And then also, I think it's about giving our young people as many experiences, the building blocks to working full time. You know, lots of us had part-time jobs, as we didn't go straight into a full-time job. So how do you build that? And it's very much what we try and talk to our young people at university about, is have that part-time job. You need extra income. Think about what that looks like, something for your CV, and start developing and thinking about stuff for later. You know, we're not going to all do it at once, but yeah, for me it's about having as broad and a wider net as possible, and then following and being led by the young person's aspiration, because that you're more likely to sustain something if it's your dream, yeah, and your ambition. Please.
So when we met with the young people as well, I think this was something that they spoke really clearly about the idea of being judged as a care leaver, or if I'm a care leaver, that person's going to see drugs or this issue. And so they felt that quite clearly. And so something we thought about as part of planning the programme is, whose responsibility is it for that knowledge? And is it the young person to bring it, or is it actually for us as an organisation initially to try and change that perception? And it's again being very careful about not being patronizing and that undermining that, but trying to turn the narrative on these young people from a problem to, well, this person has been through a lot and they're resilient and they have insights and council services that another person might not, because they've had really close access to it. So it goes back to that fourth project about that corporate parenting across the organisation and sharing that information so that it's not just children who are thinking about this trauma-informed approach, but that project goes to other parts of the organisation and tries to have that conversation so that we're doing the work as an organisation rather than expecting these young people, as you say, to come in. So I think it's a fine line we want to walk of not being patronising, but also taking the responsibility ourselves. And then I think it's something for the future, maybe about some people may not want to work within this organisation. So can we begin to work with other organisations, like do our part first in Harringay and then look to work with partner organisations? It's potentially something for like a further down the line.
That all sounds like really sensible and wonderful. I suppose the reason I'm asking is because I'm a lecturer in my day job, and I know that we have with us young people who are care leavers and care experienced. And I know that they are there because they're resilient and capable and ambitious and all of those great things that they are. I also know that what's made them resilient and ambitious will have been some very difficult circumstances in their life. And sometimes that can affect how they feel in certain circumstances. And my interest in this is particularly that those young people are empowered, maybe it's through a coaching program, whatever it is, to learn how to express that appropriately for them, with those trusted, hopefully eventually trusted adults or people who might be in a position of responsibility in relation to them, so that if there are little hurdles along the way, and there will be for everybody, that there's a way of communicating that. So that I completely take everything that you said and I support it, but I think there is just something about supporting our young people to be able to advocate for themselves as well through that process in a way that they feel comfortable.
Thank you. Thank you. I absolutely agree 100%. And I think that that is our job as a parent, as a corporate parent, to make sure that they can fly when they leave the nest, so to speak, and that we're not always hand holding. I think that what I've heard of the young people's advisors in particular, that they literally do parent. And they share a lot of their own personal experience, as you would as a parent, and they encourage and nurture and push them. And it's really hard to communicate that. I heard it in the feedback in 2023 from Ofsted, where Ofsted were on the ceiling with pride and joy at the work that the team did. And I have stories that we probably don't have time to go through, that it wasn't only about their employment, it was about their relationships, about how they, cope with loneliness. It was every aspect of their lives. And I think Emma illustrating the coffee is one of the things you don't find in a textbook, but I absolutely think that that's our ambition. There's no point them not being resilient and able to go out in the world. It's hard enough, in these, cost of living crisis and everything else that's going on. But thank you.
Absolutely. To be honest, I haven't got any questions because the reports were so incredibly comprehensive, and now the discussion around them as well, that I don't need to ask you, what happens when people are at university and they want to come back and stay in Harringay in the holidays, for instance, which I was going to ask you, because I already know. So, but no, I have got something to say. Just I'm so impressed by how comprehensive the package is that's being offered from. The parenting is just amazing. I'm so impressed, and yeah, the fact that we're not just looking to sort of clothe and house and make our kids resilient, but we're actually looking for them to all self-actualize, that's a pretty amazing ambition, and I think we all share it, and thank you very much indeed.
Just to sort of go, as you mentioned, just say it goes beyond bread and butter stuff, really. It's that socialization, soft stuff, things that wouldn't occur to you unless you'd raising your own children, basically. These are the soft things that you impart without you knowing that you're imparting them on children. And I think it'd be interesting to see. Let me just see actually what comes out of it actually in the first round of sort of conversations with the young people who go through this once you formalise the structures and everything. I have a question with regards to the council offer in terms of our offer about the vacancies. Before Councillor Cressida chaired general purposes, I used to sit on staffing remunerations, the predecessor committee, and one of the things that we found quite challenging the service, quite frankly, not the children's service, the council as a whole, was its commitment to building, scaling up apprenticeships. And a lot of the conversations would go around, well, we need to do it in a way, councillor, where at the end of it, there's a place for them to go to. And I think that's something that I'm hoping, as the whip has not allowed me to go on the committee this year. I'm just teasing you. She's helping me out by taking me off the committee. Let's have some free time. I've had a chance to chase that issue because I do think that's been a big barrier historically in terms of us scaling up our capacity as a council. So what kind of buy-in are we attempting to get from those directors that are a bit more reluctant? Because I suspect a lot of it is reticence of dealing with people who have an element of trauma in that sense, an element of, well, our service isn't sort of built up in this way at the moment. And also the third one, which I have to say is a non-answer, which is there has to be a job at the end of it, essentially, which is not an excuse to have an apprenticeship program. So I just think I'll be interested to see what kind of what you could say in the public meeting, of course, what you could say about that kind of apprehension and how do you sort of try and break that down. And then the other thing I was going to say was there are some examples in the borough, and you've named a few organisations, but there are some smaller organisations who've been quite successful in building up a lot of corporate equivalent kind of relationships. And it might be worthwhile, if I can signpost it outside this meeting, to sit down with them because they've been quite successful in really get some quite impressive employers on board. And a lot of them would be great for fulfilling their own sort of corporate social responsibility. They love that sort of stuff. There's one in my ward in particular who are really consistently do this really well in a tactful way. And I think because my worry is that we can do what we can, we should use our own resources, but ultimately, beyond the public sector, it's the private sector, it's the voluntary sector, and there's things that are kind of outside of our control. So it's about how do we then work with ones who are willing to do it and to then start having some sort of, I don't know, MOUs where we can agree a cyclical thing. Just really thinking outside the box. I'm sure this has all been considered, but I'm very passionate about this area of work, and I think this is really the way to sort of tackle the issue about how provide sort of opportunity to young people. Thank you.
Yeah, so on the first question of how do you get these roles, it's something that we are very aware that it's difficult when you go beyond children's, that there may be that sort of pushback or there's pressures as the council generally. So I think that what we've kind of imagined is it's going to be that sort of trickle down approach of if you can engage at the highest levels of from CEO to directors downwards and try and progress it that way. So I think that in terms of through our action plan that we've outlined, one of our key sort of points is going to the senior leadership team, kind of doing the same pitch again on employment and trying to kind of engage with that sort of that band of the organisation for then hopefully for them to then drive through that change. And then I think that it's then also kind of having the accompanying kind of package around that young person to try and help address those sort of maybe concerns there may be. So, well, what's the plan we have if you've offered us these 10 ring-fence jobs that are actual jobs, they're not an apprenticeship for 6 months, or they're not you're not getting paid, but you're going to be working for 6, but it's a paid opportunity that you'll be working here and then you can progress. Well, what are we doing around that person? So mentoring, so that if there are those bumps in the roads, as Councillor Weston's mentioned, that they've got someone there to help them navigate those first few steps. So I think that would be in terms of like securing the opportunities is like that's the approach we've thought about, as hopefully seeing it trickle down from senior leadership, and we're seeing that from housing. Of the interim AD for housing was talking to us about the Hornsey Town Hall and saying, well, when you're going to get this done, like get on with it. So I think that when you're at that level, you can see the impact it has as it comes down the organisation. There's a second question that I'm not, if you could remind me of it.
More of a comment, really, just a case of outside this meeting. It's just because obviously we can only offer so much. And there are, even in some big organisations, but there are some sort of medium-sized organisations in the borough that are very good in terms of this area of work in particular. They're very specific about care leaver experienced children or young adults in terms of trying to secure some work in the private sector, in the voluntary sector. They've been quite successful in placing them, and they've got this really good way of doing it, essentially, without going into the details here. But I'm happy to sort of take this offline and maybe have a separate suggested these are people I think you should speak to, because they're doing this right now. They're doing it quite well. And it might be just to explore how they manage to go and sort of do it, essentially, because they're far smaller, far nimble, but they've been very impactful. Because I think, as you mentioned, there's only such that we can offer, but ultimately the jobs are, there's a myriad of jobs out there. We need to try and be realistic about the young person, what their aspiration is. They may want to work in a corporate sector or a voluntary sector role, for instance. Thank you.
I'll just repeat what everybody said. It's been really, really stimulating and terrific evening of a tour of all the linked up services in the department. It's been an eye-opener about the reports and the depth of the work. So I really want to thank everybody. With regard to this, I've got a couple of points. One about this scheme called Money House, which Agaili mentioned in her report, and you've mentioned, and I just think it's a sort of thing which we should be trying to bring to our schools, actually. I don't think it should just be for care leavers. And I did wonder, do they, I mean, you commission them, and whether it would be worth having a conversation about how that can be adapted, because all young people need to know about how to get a bank account. Everybody needs to know about scams and all of that stuff. Not just, it isn't just like care leavers are a special breed of people.
No, not at all.
They might need it more.
Yeah.
But in fact, a lot of young people need that.
Originally, the way it was commissioned, Councillor Brabazon, was for all young people in Haringey.
Oh.
But I'm not sure what happened, but maybe we can revisit
Maybe
that. It
just
was something that
that.
I knew was very impactful for care leavers. It's something that I very much held on to. Because previously we used to run our own independence workshops, and it's a huge undertaking. And it has been iterated over the years, but we've managed to maintain it. And it's
I mean, I
something we
think
could revisit, but housing related support with the original commissioner.
I think it's the sort of thing which would be attractive to get a small grant somewhere, actually. My usual venue, my usual place, Tottenham Grammar School, that sort of thing. I think that would appeal completely and so on. So maybe that's worth talking about separately. The other thing I want to say in terms of all this, the development of jobs and so on, I just wondered whether you had any relationships with the North Mid or the Royal Free and Health, because they're huge employer.
Yeah.
And there are always vacancies.
So I think
there may not be a brain surgeon, but
no, and over the
start
years,
somewhere.
over the years, they've very much tried to work with our young people with SEN, and they've done some really great work around some internships for young people with EHCPs. So I think we could revisit that. I think they're still doing some of that work.
And my final point is we're just developing at a very early stage as a thing called a strategic learning partnership with the college, which is really about all the sort of fragmentation in FE, across the borough. But FE is another whole muddle of providers and so on. And so we've had one meeting with the college and another meeting tomorrow. And one of the things that strikes me is that particularly in Haringey, the college, first of all, the Capital College has different bases for different types of courses, but in Tottenham are all the courses that are vocational. And I think the college are dying to be more, have a bigger relationship, better relationship with the council. I think it's sort of drifted off. And I really think that that is an avenue, because for young people, I'm not saying everybody, people have different skills. If a young person does want to be an electrician, you go down the road to Tottenham, they're all set up for all those things, and they're crying out for these jobs. People are crying out for these skills, and it actually literally is on the doorstep. You know, personally, I'm in favour of people learning about London. You know, there are jobs outside of Harringay, but the college, I think, is an untapped resource. Perhaps you have all the links already, I don't know. But I do think that they are crying out for that stronger relationship, and it might be worth your while go and talk to them, because we want young people to be settled, to have jobs and so on. And finally, Hornsey Town Hall, we've heard about for a very long time. Very long time, I think, these flats. I think they're apocryphal. They're really there, are they? Yeah. I think the danger might be once you're in these flats, you may never want to leave.
Yeah, so we, as I say, housing are now like demanding, when are you going to be placing our young people in the flats? So we are, trying to work towards a timeline as quickly as possible, and we're thinking about how we can deliver that in terms of getting through the stages. And I think they're being used as temporary accommodation in the meantime. So they're being used in the interim. But in terms of, someone being in the placement and then thinking, well, this is rather nice and rather fancy, we're looking at it being 2 years. So they'd have the tenancy would be 2 years long, about having that support, the different, like learning different skills, preparing for independency and housing advising. That really what you'd probably want to do is put them onto the register to get to the top of the housing list, because that usually takes about 2 years, so that once you've run through that process, hopefully then
I wish you luck. Everybody moving out there. And Cressida, final question.
Well, it's not a question, but can I just say that if young people do move into these flats, it's very close to my counsellor surgery, which is held at Hornsey Library. Do point them in that direction, and I'll always be very delighted to meet them and to assist them in any possible way that I can. Thank you.
You said they interested in the council and all the jobs, but I mean, we talked to them about being a citizen. I mean, that's for us, that's really important. Young people understand they're citizens and have rights, and it's not just about the council as a service provider. It's about being, there's such a democratic deficit now. That would be, if you ever want any of us to come and talk to young people about being citizens as well as getting jobs, any of us will come and do it, because we all love talking.
I think that would be really good, because having like the experience of having Dion there, and I think you could really sense them seeing that, oh, like the person who's in charge is here to listen to me. And they, as I said, they did give it both barrels. I think there was one young person went on a bit of a 5 minute and went, and also this, and it was, so I think that then again, having that sort of person would be, I think it's very empowering.
Well,
so
I'm volunteering us.
Okay, I will, next stage, when we next meet with them, I'll put it on the agenda.
Thing I want to say. I understand, Keith, that this is your last meeting. I didn't know, otherwise I would have brought some chocolates or something. I honestly didn't know.
It's fine. It's fine. No, it is my last meeting. It's been a privilege to be here and to be part of the discussions, with our care leavers, with our children in care. It's amazing. And, leaving on a positive note in terms of where we've started, in terms of the journey and where we are now. So I feel with the team beside me, it's been a pleasure.
On behalf of all of us, it's been absolutely lovely knowing you and meeting you and working with you and hearing about the work, and wish you the very, very best in your new career. I said to Anne, you were looking at the park, she had glasses on.
That's my new look now. That is my new look.
New look, that's right.
Just to add, that Keith joined us. You joined us, Keith, just before the Ofsted inspection of 2023, and we were good in all areas. And we had more work to do in the children in care line, which was what requires improvement. I now think it was sort of set up by Ofsted that way to show us your skills and your ability. Because they came earlier this year, you know, so you could excel in the focus visit. I kind of think you have good contacts, you know. So we're really pleased to see the improvement in that, you know, in that area. You know, Ofsted were glowing. In the final feedback session, we were sat there, Dion and I, you were there, Councillor Brabazon, with the leader and Andy, and they were talking positive, and it was more 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 positive, and they went on. And then they stopped, you know, and it's like, well, where's the other bits? And they didn't have any other bits. So we said, well, carry on with the the positives. So we can't, you know, it's just published. And so we'll celebrate that at our next meeting, which will be in the new municipal year. But we all want to thank you for your contributions in driving that forward. And we'll also be singing your name and all the hard work that you've done at the audit committee. You will remember that one well. Yeah.
That one too.
So thank you from us all, as Councillor Brabazon says. Thank you.
And thank everybody. Sorry, should have said that to the mic.
You enforce
The whole team.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So that I'll close me and everybody on screen. I can see Andrea there. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Take care.
Good night.